to another Ask AE webinar that we organize at the Academy of Management Review. And our today's guest is Jessica Methot from Rutgers University. Jessica, let's start with introductions, but I leave it to you.
Oh, sure. So why don't I go ahead and share my slides and we can pull up my introduction. Thank you all so much for joining us. Okay.
And for those who are just joining, again, hello and welcome to another Ask AE webinar that we organize at the Academy of Management Review. And our guest today, Jessica Methot. Jess?
Hi. All right, thanks so much. So really excited about this initiative, and thank you to Donna for organizing and for being here to coordinate. So I'm Jessica Methot. I am an associate editor at the Academy of Management Review. I'm an associate professor at Rutgers University and a distinguished research professor at the University of Exeter. So my research interests in general are in the area of interpersonal workplace relationships and intra-organizational social networks. So specifically, I focus on the temporal and the multidimensional features of network ties among employees and the emotions implicated in those relationships. And how that translates into AMR is if you are interested in submitting a paper to AMR, oftentimes you will have the opportunity to select an associate editor. So you can pick one or two associate editors who you think would be a good fit to handle your paper. So the types of papers that I get at AMR are more micro organizational behavior papers and human resource management papers. So my area of expertise in social network analysis also spans into how formal HR practices transform informal social networks. So I'll get some of your HR papers as well. But there are a host of different associate editors, and so there's really a nice opportunity to get a good match when you kind of look through our bios on the website and make a decision about who you want to recommend as your associate editor to handle your paper. So a little bit more about me. Formerly, I had the opportunity to serve as an associate editor at Personnel Psychology, and now I have the honor of serving as an AE at AMR. And it's really given me a well-rounded set of experiences and the chance to do a deeper dive into both empirical and theoretical work and the process of publishing in these different kinds of journals. So I'm happy to answer questions about how these journals compare as well as we get to that point. So Donna, was there anything else that you wanted to mention before I kind of dive into the agenda and what I'll be covering?
No, just to say that this presentation is recorded, but we will stop the recording right at the end of it so that we could dive into the Q&A session. And for the participants, you are very welcome to post your questions in the chat. We will attend to them after your presentation. So go ahead, please. Thank you.
Great, great. So for the agenda today and for the topic of this Ask an AE session, which is an initiative that I'm really, really excited about, today we are going to focus on how we as potential authors of theory papers can determine whether a theory paper is the best vehicle for our ideas, or reorienting our thinking around receiving rejections and seeing rejections as opportunities. So I'll start out by talking about the common reasons that we have a paper rejected from AMR. So, it's actually really quite common. Of course, none of us want a rejection, but most of us in this career are going to get more rejections than acceptances. So since it's really common, I want us during the session to be able to understand how we can leverage those decisions to repurpose our papers into potentially different formats. So to that end, I will cover some complementarities that we see across different types of paper formats, and then we'll go over some specific alternative formats that we might be able to consider for our papers. And then I'll give a few examples of papers that successfully pivoted from theory-only papers that say were submitted to AMR and maybe were rejected to other formats. And then we'll wrap up before the Q&A session by discussing some ways to get involved with AMR to boost your chances of successful publication. So before I kind of dive into the specific topic that I want to cover for this session, I just want to lay the groundwork for who we are at AMR and what our journal is about. So I suspect that many of you are familiar with AMR, have submitted papers to AMR before, but maybe for those of you who are early career scholars or who really haven't kind of dipped their feet into writing theory papers yet, the mission of the Academy of Management Review is to publish articles that develop new theory, significantly challenge or enhance existing theory, craft ways to improve the process of writing theory and theory development, or synthesize diverse ideas into fresh, if not entirely new theory, all with the goal of advancing our understanding of management and organizations. So I want to point out here, maybe for those of you who aren't as familiar with AMR, that the name of the journal is a little bit misleading. So Academy of Management Review, we do not publish literature reviews. So we really are a theory development journal. So we don't take literature reviews, we don't publish case studies, and we don't publish empirical research. So if you have data, qualitative or quantitative, we do not publish papers that have data in them, really focused on theory and theory development. So on that note, I want to jump into some of the initiatives that we offer at AMR. So in some of the previous Ask an AE sessions, this set of topics in this slide had been towards the end of the session, but I decided to open with it because it's going to help transition into the topic that I want to cover. And so to touch on some of these, we are offering some really great initiatives. Some of them were launched by the previous editorial team under Sherry Thatcher. Some of them have been launched by us under our current EIC, Chris Byron, and some of them have been ongoing for many, many years. So these include outreach workshops. So you might see us advertise idea development workshops. We have in-person workshops across the globe. We also offer several virtual workshops, so you can join those as well. And I think that towards the end of this session, Irina Burns, who's our fantastic editorial manager, will mention or drop into the chat some of the PDWs that we offer at the Academy of Management Conference as well. Another initiative that was started by the previous editorial team is the Bridge Reviewer Program. I won't dive into the details of that yet because I'll talk about that towards the end, but it's a really great way to get involved in the Academy of Management Review, to become more familiar with writing reviews of theory papers. We have this initiative, Ask an AE series, and then you'll see as you start to kind of dig into some of the issues that have been published in AMR, a lot of them start with a from the editor essay. So these are commentaries, editorials that date back to the 80s and 90s that really give readers a good sense of how to write a theory paper. So demystifying the theory writing process, different ways of writing theory that can be really helpful in preparing for and ensuring that you've packaged your theory paper appropriately. We also have special topic forums. So if you have a particular paper that fits into a call that we have, so a particular issue that's dedicated to a special topic. Forthcoming, we have a special topic forum on artificial intelligence, polarization, marginalized groups. And we have the AMR Origins series. So these are podcasts and YouTube videos that are essentially informal interviews with an interviewer breaking down this process with the authors of a particular AMR article to really get a sense of how they got to this point of publishing the paper. And really helpfully, our current EIC, Chris Byron, wrote a fantastic From the Editors piece about leveling the playing field that came out a few months ago, and how we can make the journal more accessible. So lots of different opportunities that are available. And so I wanted to mention that because it helps us dive into this topic, which is lots of our papers get rejected from AMR. So you might be taking all the right steps. You read Chris's From the Editor's piece, you look at all of these initiatives, you integrate tips for how to craft theory. You seek input from friendly reviewers before you submit. You send your paper to multiple journals that accept theory-only papers, and you still might end up with an unpublished manuscript. So that was really the basis for this topic. And what I want to mention is that one of my co-associate editors on our team, Asim Kaul, and I just recently published, and it'll be out in the forthcoming issue of AMR, a From the Editor's piece on this topic. So essentially asking what's next. So if you get a paper rejected from AMR or from other theory receptive outlets, what do you do with that paper? So you've got an unpublished paper, where do we go? And so just keep an eye out for this From the Editor's piece that goes into even more detail about some of the issues that I will talk about today. So this is one of the most common reasons for a rejection at AMR, that the manuscript is a better fit for a different journal. So we get a lot of these submissions go out for review. So we say, okay, there could be something here. We send it out for review. You get 3 reviewers on your paper, blind reviewers. We get those reviews back after about a month. And as an associate editor, we're looking through those reviews. We're picking out themes from those reviews to try to distill those themes into a decision and a decision letter that you can then take and decide how you're going to build on and improve your paper. So when we decide that the paper is going to be rejected, so maybe all of the reviewers agree, or there maybe is a little bit of disagreement, but they're essentially saying, listen, this doesn't really seem like a theory paper. One of the common things that we write in rejection letters as associate editors is that it looks like it's a better fit for a different journal. Say, for example, the scope of the paper isn't really big enough or deep enough to develop new theory, but this could be a really interesting primary empirical study. Maybe you should gather data and think about submitting this to the Academy of Management Journal. Or you seem to have a really good grasp on this literature and how your research question is positioned in this literature, but it seems like you're basically overviewing what's been done and synthesizing it for readers to get a better grasp of what this literature is saying, but you're not developing new theory. So maybe this is more of a review piece. Maybe you should think about submitting to Academy of Management Annals. So again, this is one of the really common reasons for rejection, is that it's just a better fit for a different journal. So again, the paper is a more theoretically grounded review piece centered on reviewing, describing, and integrating what's already been done rather than developing new theory. Or the model seems easily testable within the scope of a single empirical paper, either qualitative or quantitative, better suited for an empirical journal like AMJ. And so these are common things, common pieces of feedback that you might get in a rejection letter from AMR. But my goal for this session and our associated From the Editor's piece, mine and Asim's piece, is twofold. So first, we want to offer some thoughts and some guidance to authors who have had their theory papers rejected from AMR and maybe other theory receptive outlets as well, to help you find alternative ways of presenting your ideas rather than simply abandoning them, right? We get this rejection, we feel really deflated. There are a lot of emotions that go into writing this paper, submitting the paper, receiving the rejection. We don't want to just abandon those ideas. Second, we want to encourage more scholars to try your hand at writing theory papers. So at first glance, it could seem a little counterintuitive to encourage more theory-only papers by discussing how authors can convert those papers to other formats. But our hope really is that in highlighting the potential for this secondary market for theory-building efforts, that we can make the attempt to write theory-only papers less risky and then encourage more scholars to make this investment. And so I really love this quote from the editor's piece back in 2011, that an unsuccessful attempt to write a theory paper may have planted the seed for a completely new paper that has achieved or is along the path to publishing success. So a host of different commentaries. You're going to dig into some of these commentaries, editorials, articles, especially the FTEs at AMR, that are uncovering ways in which theory-only papers are distinct from other common types of academic papers that make a theoretical contribution. So how is theory building different? Now, there's no one best approach or template for crafting a theory paper, and we really do have more degrees of freedom in their structure, but they do share a common macro structure in terms of their organization and the major sections with other paper formats, right? We're going to see that they all have a title, they all have an abstract, an introduction that follows a similar type of recipe, a discussion section, conclusion sections. And so here and in our FTE, we reorient by helping authors pinpoint where their papers, where their theory papers might have components that complement or that share common ground with other types of papers. And so our hope is that in identifying these complementarities, authors can take the gem of their idea and leverage it to make a contribution using a different approach, but also retaining a lot of those pieces. So not having to scrap that theory paper and rebuild everything. So where might your theory paper have components that complement other types of papers? One, across the board, we need to join a conversation. This is just one of those aspects of scholarly writing in top journals that we need to be familiar with. So we want to pinpoint the 2 to 3 to 4 literatures that are core to the research question that we have, to identify and to join an ongoing conversation. So really, what do we know about this topic? So this can involve introducing or overviewing a literature, distilling the key takeaways, describing key insights. And this allows you as an author to convey who your audience is, articulate how your work is positioned in that existing literature, and to isolate your unique contribution. And we're going to see this joining a conversation in AMR papers, but also in AMJ papers, and also in org science papers, and also in Academy of Management Annals pieces. The second complementarity is in problematizing your research question. So it's really important across different types of articles, including reviews, primary empirical studies, to problematize your research question, not just say this hasn't been done before, but articulating a pressing tension, puzzle, or twist that leads readers to believe that this issue is really important. So highlighting a complication, explaining why it needs to be addressed. Third, we can describe associations between constructs. So theoretical propositions that we would see in theory papers lay the groundwork for identifying relevant variables, relevant constructs, and the testable associations between these variables, which essentially translate into hypotheses. And this is really the most common paper that we see published in AMR, those that adopt a propositional style. And both propositions and hypotheses specify testable relationships. So if you've developed a theory paper that has propositions and you get feedback that says, listen, this really sounds more like an empirical paper, you can often ground those propositions in a theoretical foundation and then gather data to test those hypotheses. And then finally, making a theoretical contribution. So we get told this in our PhD programs, we get told this as junior scholars, is that in order to publish in top journals, we need to make a theoretical contribution. And this is not unique to theory-only papers. We see this in quantitative papers, review papers, qualitative papers. They can all make a novel theoretical contribution. So for example, qualitative data analysis relies on researchers' interpretations of their data and the analytical moves that they make to generate theoretical insights from their data. So fortunately, one of these features can complement or inform, or all of these features can complement or inform an alternative paper format. So moving on to what are these alternative paper formats? To identify these, me and Asim reached out to former editorial teams at AMR, our current associate editor team, colleagues that we know, for exemplar papers that were submitted as theory-only papers that received rejections at AMR and maybe other theory-receptive outlets as well, but then ultimately pivoted into alternative types of published papers. And then we reached out to those authors and we asked for feedback about their experiences in crafting a theory-only paper and then pivoting to a different type of paper. So what are those types of papers? I've already kind of hinted at those. The first and the most common example that we saw was an integrative review paper. So integrative reviews are unique vehicles for synthesizing existing knowledge and assimilating different perspectives. We also saw examples of inductive and abductive papers. So this involves combining theory with, say, qualitative work. This could be a single in-depth case study, a set of shorter comparative cases, grounded theory for the exploration of qualitative data, or ethnographic work to illustrate and deepen the theoretical arguments. Or we could formalize the theory through formal modeling and simulation papers, mathematical models, simulations, or through deductive hypothesis development and testing. So empirically testing the predictions from that theory, say using the traditional scientific method approach where we identify a theory, develop hypotheses from that theory, and test those hypotheses. So these are really the four kind of alternative paper formats that we cover in our From the Editors piece. And then again, we got some examples. So we had the opportunity to identify some exemplar papers. And then in our From the Editors piece, we have a summary table where we overview those four types, and then we cover when they're most useful in terms of pivoting, how it can boost our contribution, and how the initial theory building effort actually helped to develop a successful alternative type of paper. So many papers, starting with integrative reviews, many papers with the goal of making a theoretical contribution have a really strong grasp of the existing literature and provide a really useful summary or synthesis of the existing work on a topic. So for those of you, say, who in your dissertations took on the 3-paper format, for example, one of those could be a very thorough literature review, and you are deeply steeped in this literature and you know all of the work that's been done on this. And you say, okay, I've done this literature review. I think I might have a theory here. I'm going to submit it to AMR. You could potentially synthesize that literature that's out there, offer a typology or a taxonomy of existing ideas, or highlight connections or common themes across disconnected literatures, or it could raise important future research questions, an ambitious agenda for future research. While all of those are really important contributions to collective scholarship, unless the paper moves the conversation forward by offering novel ideas or arguments, it's unlikely to get published as a theory paper. So if you've done all of that work, you could then submit it as a review piece. So this could happen, or you might get a rejection from AMR when the theory is insufficiently novel, or the contribution lies in the integration and synthesis of existing knowledge and theory. And this boosts the contribution by contributing to cumulative knowledge, by adjudicating a literature and shaping the conceptual space, highlighting novel connections between existing work, and challenging taken for granted assumptions by redirecting the literature and potentially uncovering new insights. And this helps having done the initial theory building effort helps create or craft a review piece. Because you have the foundational understanding of the existing literature and pinpointing unanswered questions, you have a coherent perspective to help guide the integration and turn that summary into a synthesis, and identifying promising avenues for future exploration. So one of the papers that we identified that started out as a theory paper. So this set of authors wrote what they considered a theory only or theory development paper. They submitted that paper to the Academy of Management Review. That paper was rejected. And some of the feedback that they got was, listen, this is a really interesting topic and it's an important piece, but it really sounds like it's a review of the literature. And so these authors took that feedback and they said, yeah, that sounds right. We don't seem to be developing new theory, and there actually are a lot of articles out there on this topic. So let's pivot and let's write a review paper instead. So they submitted a proposal to the Academy of Management Annals. That proposal was accepted, and they drafted that into a full review piece. And one of the quotes when we interviewed these authors and we asked them about their experience of pivoting from theory to review was they said there was a lot of evidence in peer-reviewed studies that supported much of the theoretical foundation. In retrospect, it seemed as if the phenomenon was a bit too messy and needed organization and better scoping before attempting to develop a more nuanced theory. And so this really gave them kind of the tools that they needed to develop a review piece instead of a theory piece. The second type was that inductive or abductive paper. And here it's most useful when the theory is novel, but it's underdeveloped, when the theory seems too abstract or unrealistic. And it can boost the theoretical development contribution on the grounds that the theoretical arguments is in a real world context. It helps to identify and develop additional theoretical nuance. And if you tried doing theory first and now you're thinking, listen, maybe this is better as a qualitative piece, that initial theory building effort helped to guide identification of an empirical context and potential measures, deepens the appreciation of theoretical relationships and tensions. And so one of the pieces that we uncovered that did this, where they submitted a paper to AMR, it was rejected from AMR. And they said, actually, this seems like a qualitative paper. You could build theory by becoming more immersed in a particular context, gathering interview data in that context, analyzing the themes from that data, and building theory. And so from Murray and Fisher, we spoke to Greg Fisher from this piece, and he said that working on the theory paper first allowed them to appreciate some of the theoretical tensions and paradoxes in the context where they ended up gathering qualitative data. If we hadn't grappled with the conceptual issues initially, we may not have appreciated some of the theoretical tensions exemplified in that setting. So it really gave them a better opportunity to uncover some of the themes that they found when they decided to pivot to a qualitative piece. Our third one was informalizing the theory. And so this can be especially valuable in cases where the review process finds the original manuscript is insufficiently rigorous, deep, or surprising, or that the theory is too confusing or hard to follow. And so the use of formal methods can help to expand the potential outlets for theoretical ideas in the paper. And formalization can help the authors more clearly communicate their core ideas. And so it boosts the theoretical development and contribution by overcoming ambiguous terminology, making communication of complex relationships easier. It identifies key boundary conditions and contingencies, and it can provide surprising or non-obvious insights. So again, formalizing theory through formulas or through simulations. And then how would, say, trying to develop a theory piece help in setting the stage for shifting to a more formal theory process? One, it frames the model in established literatures. It identifies key constructs to parameterize the model. And it makes the translation of the model outcomes into accessible verbal theory easier. So we've got these formulas, for example, and now we can think about how we would translate those verbally. Now, I will say that the review pivot was the most common. The qualitative pivot was the second most common. We did not find any examples. If you know of any, please let me know. But we didn't find any examples of papers that had been rejected from AMR that then adopted a more formal theory process. We have a lot of examples of papers that developed theory using that approach, but none that had shifted from theory only to formalization of that theory. And then finally, we have our deductive papers. And so this approach might be especially helpful when the editors and the reviewers' feedback suggests that the theory paper has a really interesting core idea, but it doesn't make a sufficient theoretical contribution to warrant publication as a standalone theory piece. Or where the validity of the theory is in question, where they say, we're not really sure, you should probably try testing this. And it boosts the theoretical contribution by providing empirical evidence in support of that theory, so essentially testing theory. And it enhances the contribution of the paper by pairing theory development with theory testing. And trying to start with a theory-only paper can help because it gives well-developed theoretical predictions, say in propositions, that can then be directly translated into hypotheses and ensures logical consistency and coherent contribution of the empirical work. I actually thought that this one was going to be the most common form, and we also didn't find any examples of this either. But it is one of the pieces of feedback that we very often give where we say, this just doesn't seem like it's a big enough question. Try testing this as an empirical paper. So kind of in wrapping up some of the takeaways, you know, the key here is to not give up, right? So there really is always hope, and there is a secondary market for these theory papers. So the idea that a theory only paper isn't the end all be all, or maybe even the end goal, that we're hoping that this from the editor's piece and this Ask the AE series can aid in considering how you might be able to pivot. But it could also be helpful to any of you who are in the planning stages to help you anticipate whether a theory-only paper really is the most appropriate vehicle for your ideas. You know, do I have a big enough question? Am I getting feedback that maybe this should be a primary empirical study, or maybe this just sounds like more of a review piece? And so before you really dive into trying to write a theory paper, rethinking whether that's the best approach. So that is kind of the wrap up to this session. Donna, do you want me to kind of go into how they can get involved in AMR?
Yeah, absolutely. If you do you have a slide for that?
I do. I've got a couple
yeah,
of a couple of
absolutely. Let's
examples,
do
a
that.
couple of ways. Great.
Yeah,
So just
let's
a
do
couple
that
of ways now, if we've kind of piqued your interest and you're thinking, you know, I don't feel quite ready to write a theory paper yet, but I really do want to get a better sense of how I can be involved, some of the things that I might be able to do to wrap my head around being able to develop better theory or help support the journal. So there really is kind of a set of ways, or a series of ways, that you can become more familiar with AMR. And the first is to read, dive into the journal, see the types of papers that are published, see how they fall into the different categories that I talked about in terms of the mission of AMR, become more familiar with kind of the recipe for writing these different types of theory papers and how they make an impact and a theoretical contribution. Reading really is the best way to become familiar. Learn about the journal. Oh, so in terms of reading the journal, stay up to date with what's been recently accepted and published. Go on the AMR website, sign up to get the journal email alerts so that you know when things are online first and in press. You can start to see if it's some of the things that are forthcoming. You learn more, right? So start to become involved, go to some of the IDWs, get a sense of how you can develop some of your ideas. Another way to get involved as well, of course, articles in your topic areas, look at things that are highly cited, etc. One of the initiatives that I really want to highlight is in reviewing. So this is one of the best ways, beyond reading the articles that are published in the journal, that you can become involved in AMR, is something called the Bridge Reviewer Program. So this was an initiative that was launched by Sherry Thatcher's team, the former editorial team. And this Bridge Reviewer Program is a great way for us to build a pipeline of scholars who are understanding of how to review theory-only papers and write developmental reviews. So you sign up to become involved in the Bridge Reviewer Program, and you have to watch a series of tutorials. So we've created a series of videos to help you understand what it means to review for the journal, how to write developmental reviews. Once you've completed kind of the training, which is a really low investment effort, but really, really helpful. Once you've kind of completed the training, you get thrown into the Bridge Reviewer Program. So you're not officially a reviewer yet, but you will get assigned a paper to review, and you'll also get assigned a Bridge Reviewer mentor. And this is someone from our board, our editorial board, not necessarily an associate editor from our team, but on the editorial board. And you'll get a paper. You'll write your review of that paper. You'll submit your review. Now, the authors of the paper will not see your review, but you will see all of the other reviews that come in on that paper. And then you'll kind of be able to benchmark with your review and those reviews. You'll get the decision letter, so you'll see kind of how the issues that you raised fit into the decision, and then you'll set up a meeting with your mentor. And that mentor will kind of talk you through some of the things that you did really well, some of the things that could be improved. And then once you complete and graduate from the Bridge Reviewer program, you get into our official reviewer pool and you get to start reviewing for AMR.
Good.
And then, oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so it's a really exciting way, not only to become more familiar with how to write reviews, but see the process of publishing an AMR as well. And then finally, submit to the journal. So develop papers to be submitted to AMR, take the time and effort to develop the best possible paper. Think about your bold ideas, craft that paper really well, be conscientious, get feedback prior to submitting to AMR through conference presentations, department presentations, friendly reviews, our IDWs, all different ways that you can get feedback and input from established scholars and people who've published an AMR before you submit to AMR.
Brilliant. All right, good. So thank you very much, Jessica, for detailed presentations.